call to order the November 19th, 2019 Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission meeting. Jamie, can you do roll call for us?
Karen Moorhead.
Here.
Terry Steenblock.
Here.
Jack McKenzie.
Here.
Doug Ramseth.
Here.
Tim Miller.
Here.
Jason Steenblock.
Here.
Tim Gary.
All right. Open forum, I don't have anybody here. Do you have anything for that?
Nope.
All right, so we need to approve the agenda for tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Well, just 1 second here. We actually have a couple things that we need to switch on here, so if we can amend that to.
Thought we had to
Amend-
approve it first and then amend it. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. If you can
Okay.
just do a friendly amendment to.
I'll do a friendly amendment to that. And then make a motion to amend 6A Castlewood Golf Course Agreement and agenda item 5D and replace item 6A with the 2020 work plan.
Will you accept that amendment?
You seconded.
You seconded it.
A friendly second, yes.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. Motion carries. Okay, now I just have to remember to do it in that order.
Yeah.
All right, so first on the list is the Arts in the Park Entertainment Contract.
All right, so Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, tonight through our agenda, I'll walk you through each item. You do have a packet provided of information to guide this conversation. So the first item, as Terry had mentioned, is the Arts in the Park Music Entertainment Contract. And just a little background information on this. For the past several years, the city has held a contract annually with Mr. McBride, and every year for Arts in the Park that we've had this contract, we're basically contracting with him for his services in soliciting and procuring our musical acts for Arts in the Park. He also provides sound and equipment necessary to run Arts in the Park, and he's on site each Tuesday to help with the setup, the takedown, and just kind of the facilitation of the entertainment piece to Arts in the Park. We've found this to be very helpful to the city. It's really helped bring in some talent to our Arts in the Park concert series to really draw in different groups of people and help grow the event. And it's really nice to just have that peace of mind knowing that somebody is there responsible for that technology piece of the performance. So before you today is an updated contract for 2020. What you'll see here, there really were not any notable changes to the contract we've had in place annually. The only thing I went through and changed were obviously the dates for the 2020 performances that he would be contracted for should Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission like to move forward with him again. So you'll see the term of the agreement would be January 1, and it would terminate August 18th, which would be the last Tuesday we would require his services. The duties are outlined. Again, he's at each Arts in the Park I changed it to 4 o'clock till 9 o'clock, just because that's when he's been arriving anyhow. Again, just all of the items listed under promoter's duties. Nothing notable to have changed there. I have communicated with Woody to see Mr. McBride to kind of outline the schedule for 2020. So I did request, you'll see item B on page 2, that he provides a list of a first draft to us, to the city by February 10th, so that we could be looking at a first draft at our February meeting. Additionally, once the contracts or our lineup is set, I requested in item G on page 2 that he provides all of the promoters' paperwork that's required to the city no later than April 16th. So that should put us at having everything finalized with city council late April, early May, and then we're set to go for the season. So The only challenges we had last year is the promoter was putting courtesy holds with bands a little earlier than I think we were ready, and so we just ran into a few challenges with that. So just developing a schedule up front that we can follow, so we're on the same page of what that expectation is on what deliverables will be due to the city and for the Parks Commission to review. I thought this year, and it's not outlined in the agreement, but in January, he's gonna provide a list of recommended acts before he starts putting them to certain dates. So we're gonna start with that process. Commission will get the opportunity to review those and comment and kind of narrow down the selection field. And then he'll put that more into a formal schedule for February.
I see under compensation, was his compensation not raised? Is it the same as before?
And that was the last, yep, I'm getting to that here, but his compensation for 2020 is the same as ask of $333 per Tuesday, and that is the same as last year.
Okay, thank you.
So again, just kind of breaks down when we'll pay him and which amounts. And again, the rest would remain the same. So tonight, looking for any comments, discussion. Otherwise, if prepared, I'm looking to approve a contract to hire Mr. McBride for our 2020 music entertainment concert series.
I'd like to make a motion that we retain Mr., well, I call him Woody, for the arts in the park year next year. I think he's done a fabulous job.
Yes, I second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? I know I had a few questions, but I'll defer to
I do.
everybody else
Yeah, I
first.
got one too.
Okay.
Just as far as the dates, I know we had talked about maybe, extending or leaving open the opportunity to extend if we have a cancellation. I don't see that addressed in the contract, although maybe loosely. Just wondering if we had any backup plans with Woody or,
So if in the event we would have a band cancel and reschedule into September, just language to support that, he would be responsible to reschedule as well as part of his compensation.
yeah.
We can, yep, I can add that under, let me just see where I would put that.
By F, Jamie?
Yeah, I see in the
Yeah.
inclement weather,
But you're talking in the event that you have to cancel. it.
So that's under promoters, under number 2, promoters' duties. So I think this would have to fall under a separate number. So number 3 is compensation. We may just need to add a number, an additional number and maybe call it cancellation or cancellation policy.
yeah. something
And
to
just
that
put in
effect.
there, in the event a scheduled Tuesday's performance is canceled.
Yeah, even in F for the inclement weather, it says to give the opportunity for extra charges, but it doesn't lay out what if we cancel. Does that mean we don't pay that $333, or do we, what do we do with it? I'm not suggesting either way, just,
Sure, no, that's a valid point, and certainly something we should address here. What you're referring to in letter F would be his responsibility to work with the performer of that night. If we cancel due to weather, he would help negotiate that reschedule date. And if, let's just say it's the Centennial Community Band, if they said they can reschedule for a Saturday and then there was an additional cost for that, Woody would communicate that to us. That's what letter F is communicating.
Yep.
So nothing about your point of if we cancel due to
Woody's
weather,
fee.
Woody's role and responsibility in regards to a rescheduled date.
And
So
then does he get paid if we cancel and he's not there? And
he has been per the contract, yeah. So certainly a good point if we want to indicate that he has to reschedule as well to be on site. I think that's the main part of it,
yeah, if it's rescheduled, would.
because there is the work of coordinating and scheduling.
Clarification anyways.
Yeah. So would it be fair to add just another maybe put it after, let's see here, maybe after compensation, so like bump it to number 4 instead of, so number 3 is compensation. And bump everything down so that number 4 would be cancellation.
Then it's canceled.
And put language in there that says if
Band might, yeah, the band
a
might.
Tuesday performance is canceled due to weather or any other reason by this time, he agrees to attend the rescheduled date. Yeah,
I just remember that there are times when we don't pay them, so there's no rescheduling. If there would be, I think the point you was making is if you're going to put one in September, but otherwise on a Tuesday when it's rained before 3 o'clock or whenever it is that we cancel,
And we
I think
don't
Woody
reschedule.
should get paid, but the band doesn't get paid, so they don't
Correct.
reschedule either, right?
so you're saying he would not reschedule?
No, I don't think they have in the past, because
No.
there's no dates.
So, for example, from this year, 2019, we had 2 bands canceled due to weather. So I've been in communication and they know that they can be scheduled again for next year and we won't have to pay them for next year. So they would get their check from 2019 and perform in 2020 at no additional cost.
So in the past, then Woody still gets paid for those
He's been
days.
getting paid for those days for
Which I
the
think
coordinating
is
and,
Reasonable.
He's done it-
My question was, because we discussed earlier about extending
sure, into
potentially,
September.
which was never decided.
It was
just
never
as something as
decided,
a
no.
discussion item.
Yeah, it was
Right.
discussed.
Saying if so, we might want to look at having something in that agreement to say he will cover that date as part of the agreement, that's all.
I think that's fair.
Or at least part of it, maybe there's a fee or
Sure.
or something, so.
Any other comments related to that?
To that part? To Tim's? Or the agreement in general?
Well, we have a motion and a second, so you have some questions as well,
I
right?
do.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, on page 2, letter D, it says the promoter shall communicate with musical acts regarding the arts in the park performances, including city expectations for the same. What is the same?
That was probably some legal terminology our attorney had put in there. I think that, let's see, shall communicate with musical acts.
Does that just mean expectations for arts in the park?
I don't know, I was wondering if
Well-
we could just clarify a little bit what for the same.
I think it means that he's responsible for communicating with each group independently, as well as he's responsible to communicate with the city regarding
Including city expectations.
what's happening with regards to the performances. So he's really in charge of, he's our liaison in a sense to the bands and the performers, that I'm not on the phone with them every single time there's an update or a change or a conflict. That's his responsibility, so I think that's alluding to the fact that he would have to be communicating with them, but then inform the city as well. So if one band has a member that's sick, obviously, hey, they're maybe on the fence about performing, somebody's sick. I think that's what that means, of just making sure that he's communicating with the city as well. And it's probably some language we could certainly clarify if it's a little unclear.
Sounds legalese to me.
It certainly does.
It was, I believe that was
If we
a,
could clarify it or plain language it a little bit, just so that would be
Sure.
great if we could. And then H says that the promoter shall only use the promotional materials and language supplied by the city. You know, in the event that the budget doesn't come to fruition and we don't have that additional communication resource, is there any value in adjusting that a little bit to allow him to develop it, but it has to be approved by the city? If we wanted to do that? So I was thinking about, somebody has to create the promotional materials. And I know right now Jamie does that.
Right.
If, I know we asked for a communications resource from the budgeting standpoint to help with some of that. If we don't get the budget standpoint, that falls back to Jamie, which means something else gets pushed on down the list. If, I just feel like this is really restrictive, could we look at allowing Woody to create something and then have it be approved by the city? Just adding in, you know, you could still leave in here that the promoter shall use promotional materials either provided by or approved by the city.
Would we then be opening to letting him promote himself within that?
No, because it would have to be approved, right?
Then what would his benefit be to do that?
Would that require additional compensation?
I mean, not to say we couldn't leave that opportunity for him to do it, but, right, to your point, is if he was going to do that, his only benefit then would be compensation.
Showcasing what he does to
It's
other
either
cities.
showcasing his brand, if he even has that, I don't know Woody, so, but, or it'd be the additional compensation, to your point, would there be, not to say we can't leave it open, just saying, what would be the,
So I just have a quick comment on that. I think when this relationship or partnership began with Woody, I think he did have that sole role of being the music promoter as well, so creating the content in the flyers. And not to say that it was wrong or indifferent, but it was a different feel to than the city's branding and our branding expectations. More of a music promoter and really great at what he does in the music industry, so it just had a different look and feel, and we just wanted to make sure our messaging was consistent and following kind of our city guidelines and branding. So that's why we changed the language to have it be what the city provides. And my question or comment would be, what additional, aside from the one main schedule we put together, would we really have that we would need to create? So once we set the schedule, we kind of create the nice and fancy layout that we put out to the community. So I don't know how much more beyond that. I haven't really done a lot additional other than setting that one schedule. And the reason was just to kind of have that little bit of control on maintaining our brand and identity with what we provided there.
Okay, all right. Top of page 3, the last sentence says, failure to do so shall constitute a breach of this agreement. Wouldn't failure to do any of this constitute a breach of the agreement?
Good point.
And so if yes, I feel like leaving it in only on this one makes it feel like this one, if you break
Sure,
it, you
sure.
breach, but the rest,
agree with you completely.
Yep. I will circle back with our city attorney I agree to remove it from letter I here on page 3. And then I will just circle back with her to see if she recommends that we put any clause at the end of the agreement, maybe after insurance regarding that termination or failure, breach of contract piece. And so if it's okay with you, if she recommends some language to add about breach of contract and what that looks like, then I can add that at the very end of the agreement. Does that seem fair to everybody?
Yeah.
and then number 11 on page 4, it says, it is the second sentence, it says permittee agrees to. Do we want to make that promoter so that it's consistent?
Can you repeat where you're at?
Number 11 on page 4,
4. Thank you.
the second sentence starts with permittee agrees to. Should that be promoter, since we've used promoter?
Yes, thank you. That's a good grammatical catch. I'll
On my
make that
number
change.
11, it says promoter.
The last sentence.
Oh.
It says permittee agrees
Oh,
to
okay.
provide
I was looking
city.
at the
So
first one.
does he provide insurance for the event?
He, I believe, carries insurance for his business, or I believe so.
That's the
And I'll have to
other
see what
thing.
he
a-
submits on that.
Because the contract requires, I can't remember, it's in here, but it says additional insurance prior to June 4th, 2020. Our first concert is June 2nd, 2020. Would it be possible to say prior to
Yes.
June 2nd?
Where's that one?
It's on number 11, the very last sentence.
Even just put at the time of assigned contract or,
Okay.
something that.
Could be that his current certificate ends on June 4th, so we might already have that on file.
Okay.
So I could put even like prior to the start of our concert series or
That way.
some language. I'm following you.
That way we'd have it, if If it already covers it, it's great, we have it on file. If it doesn't, we know he's got an updated
Or
one.
just state that he agrees to carry coverage throughout the terms of the contract. That way we don't limit anything beyond it.
Yeah, that's a good, easy way to put it.
Yeah.
Would that cost him more?
Does it cost him more?
Because we don't have any arts in the park until beginning in.
I know that I'd have to check with him specifically on that. I know he does the same
It should just be a yearly.
structure for other communities and concert series as well, so I'm sure kind of within that window, he's got that coverage, so that would be a question I'd have to direct to him, but I think what you're conveying is that to make sure that he has the insurance coverage
In effect.
in effect before June 2nd, so whether I
For the
language,
dates that are.
yeah,
During
Yep.
the period of the concerts.
yep, during the term of his contract with the city.
Yep. Okay, that was it.
I've gotta go back to H, because if there's an opportunity to have him do promotional material that we're missing out on, I think that certainly would be a viable change to make. If he'd be willing to do something that we would approve, why not?
Mr. Chair, I think again, as Jamie has already said, we want the uniformity of it all. And for him to have to come up with something on his own and then go through the process of putting it through us, I mean, I don't know what else we could do. I don't know why we're thinking of additional promotional pieces. But I'd be careful of just putting it out there when, under the city, you do have that uniformity and control, and the people are used to it all now. I like things that every year they're pretty much the same. So when people see these promotional pieces, they go, oh yeah, that's right, Arts in the Park. And if he started coming up with something for one band or another, I don't know, but I don't see it as losing as an additional, I see it as an opportunity for having some problems, but just one person.
Okay. So we would be adding a cancellation policy. Clarifying the breach language along with the cancellation piece, and then making sure the insurance coverage is
Yes,
synced up.
Yep, and I just popped up on your screen, this is another series that he manages, and this is, I think that we would get something similar to this, and that's what we were receiving, which isn't, like I said, wrong or indifferent, but it's a different look and feel to what we were expecting, so I think it'd be him having to kind of reinvent the wheel, so,
I'm okay with
okay.
Are all those changes able to be put into a friendly amendment to still pass that, or do we have to wait?
If you are comfortable with that, I think those 3 items could be something, if you're in a consensus that you want to move forward hiring him with the compensation amount allocated, and it's just a few language updates, I'm comfortable making those if you guys are comfortable approving it with the said changes this evening. And again, review by city attorney.
So would I need to make a friendly amendment to, Karen, you made the motion, didn't you?
I did, and I can make the motion, well, yeah, I guess you'd have to do it. We could then vote on it as amended.
So I would make, offer forward a friendly amendment to update the Arts in the Park Music Entertainment Promoter Contract to include language regarding cancellation policy and Woody's availability, incorporating appropriate breach language, and then incorporating language to ensure appropriate insurance coverage.
I would accept that.
And then you seconded,
Second
you second?
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. All right, so then that one is approved. So then we have the Forest Lake Lions bench.
All right, so I didn't put together a staff memo just because I think this is a fairly easy one to discuss and move forward with this evening. So earlier this year, a couple months ago, there was a request from the pickleball players or club to pursue the request for additional benches at the pickleball courts. And through that process, the city ended up I sent a letter to the Forest Lake Lions Club with a formal request to consider that donation. And it was October 21st, I received notification back that they did approve at a board meeting 4 benches for the pickleball courts to be installed by our public works staff. So I said, per that letter, it had to go back to commission for final approval. So tonight, looking for some comment or feedback, or otherwise approval of that donation.
Since my knee is now all taken care of and I'm going to be playing pickleball very soon, I would like to make that motion that we accept that very generous donation.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? I would like to just bring up, I'm wondering if we could take and put 2 in the pickleball park courts and look at using 2 as part of the maintenance. I know we received requests, I feel like it was around September, October. We have 2 parks that don't have any bench. And we received requests from the public to add benches there. I'm wondering if we could go back to the Lions and ask them if we could take 2 and put them in the pickleball courts and take the other 2 and put it in the 2 parks that don't have a bench.
Didn't they ask for 6 in the first request? I mean, were they thinking of putting 6 additional benches in the pickleball court? Or was it always 4? I thought it was
Can you
6.
clarify how many they requested in the first?
I believe they were interested in like that 4 to 6. Does anyone else recall if they said, I know they would have accepted up to 6. I know that in discussion, at one point I do recall someone saying at least 2 on that one side would be for sure needed because that's where most of the activity was. And then maybe the other 2 possibly on that other side. I know that, I think they were saying like that 4 to 6 was the original request. And if anyone else remembers, but I know they were, I think, looking for at least 2 on each side and then maybe even an additional 2, which
Right.
may be more than needed on that one side, given the space.
I just remember the discussion and being out at the pickleball court, realizing that I think 4 would be really a good addition out there. And the city in our budget and our planning, we should look to putting benches that are in parks, that don't have any. It's been on the schedule since I was on the thing. We just don't get the darn things bought. But when they're generous enough to come up with an idea and want to pay for them, I kind of like to honor what they said rather than go back and say, well, we kind of like it, but we'd really like to have this idea.
The Lions didn't come up with the idea. We sent the letter to the Lions requesting 4 benches for the pickleball courts.
Right, but you remember they came first, and then we had, according to the rules of law, we had to have Jamie send a letter to make it official. And then she sent the letter, and then it came back. So I just, that would be just my personal opinion, that I would be looking to have the 4 that they're willing to pay for.
So the Lions didn't come forward with the request. The pickleball court players came forward with the request for 4 benches. And then Jamie had to send the letter to the Lions to request funding for 4 benches.
Well, I remember how it all went, but if it was just a pickleball person, you wouldn't have to send the letter back to the Lions. So it was definitely a Lions member.
No, I'm telling you, it was not a Lion request.
But it was a Lions member that brought it forward.
It was not a Lion request. It was a pickleball court member's request. And the reason why the request had to go to the Lions from Jamie was to ask the Lions to make that investment. Nobody was bringing that forward on behalf of the Lions. It was a pickleball court member that was bringing
Well,
forward.
we can discuss that back and forth, whether he was or wasn't. It doesn't make any difference to me. The reason we went back and sent them the letter, they came forward with the funds that they wanted to do that. And I just think we have to be careful with people, whoever they are, that if they ask for something and are willing to pay for it, that we don't change the mind of what they were telling us they were going to do.
I agree with Commissioner Moorhead. I would like to see the 4 benches go to the pickleball courts as we had originally prescribed. If we need benches at other locations, I think we should move forward with acting on that and leave the 4 benches for the pickle courts.
That would really finish off the beautiful pickleball courts that we have put out there too, that, as far as I can tell, other than fixing the one fence, they'd be pretty much finished out there, so.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Forest Lake Lions Club bench donation for the 4 benches at the pickleball courts.
So do we have a motion on the table from Karen?
Oh, we
And
do have one.
We need a
We
second.
need a
Okay, I guess I didn't hear a motion before. I'm
Was there a
sorry.
second on that?
I think Tim seconded.
Well, I
Okay.
will second it.
Got
Oh,
it.
we went to discussion, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So we have a motion to accept the 4 benches for the pickleball courts, seconded by Tim. Any more discussion?
Got it. So I did have in my notes, just for before you get to discussion, I had a motion from Karen and you did second it,
All
Tim.
right,
And then we went to
I
discussion, just so
apologize.
that
I
we
got
followed.
in
But yes.
what order we were going in
Yes.
on this particular
So any other
one, so-
discussion, as Chair had mentioned? Jason?
The one question I have is, how much have we spent on the pickleball court since it was erected?
I think we spent, I think it was around, and I don't have the exact number, but I know that we had to pay for the fencing, the actual development of the court, so the sandblasting, painting, striping. I believe that project was about $55,000 or so.
Okay,
And that's what we've had so far.
okay. I guess the one thing that I'm thinking about is we've spent that money at the pickleball court, and we put the Forest Lake Lions did put the benches in before. And something did come in with some other benches that were needed at another park. So I guess it makes sense, we've spent so much money there. If another park needs a couple benches, I think we should kind of split that and, because we want to keep beautifying the other parks also. So that's what I was kind of thinking.
I guess I don't think it's exclusive to one or the other. If we need benches in other parks, we should move forward and put benches in the other parks.
Exactly.
These were 4 that were donated for the pickleball courts. One of the things that we're interested in is helping seniors age well, and the pickleball activities and exercise, I think, is a good way of helping our seniors maintain their health. And so if this supports that effort with the 4 benches, I would be in favor of the 4 benches going to the pickleball court.
What kind of maintenance budget do we have left for potential benches at other?
Let's see. I can get a number on that, but I think we could potentially have some left. Let me just pull up a report here quick and see. And if not, I know our budget obviously resets shortly here in January, where it could be something that we planned for
What does a bench cost?
anywhere from around $2,000 to $3,000 a bench, depending on size, and generally if it's like a 6-foot, 8-foot, what size and how it's going to be installed. So they're not overly a huge expense.
I guess my other comment is, we could put the other couple benches in, and the pickleball court's a great place to have to play pickleball with the aging seniors or whoever wants to play pickleball, but if you're playing pickleball, in my head, it wouldn't make that hard to just throw a fold-up chair. We'll have the 2 extra benches or whatever, and then grab a couple extra chairs to go. It's just like what we do up at Arts in the Park. You bring your chair up there to enjoy the night.
I know I've spoken before, but as far as I'm concerned, that's belittling the request by saying it's okay to have a fold-up chair. If you've ever been a senior and you try to navigate on a fold-up chair, they're not that easy. But also, I go back to the fact that we've looked at benches in other places, and I don't know how that comes up into this, because we do need them. We should provide them. But this is an outside request to be able to finish off the pickleball benches that we will not have to pay for, so it's not affecting our ability to pay for benches in other parks that we need them. But I do think it'd be really sad for me to try and undo a donation from whoever it comes from and get the thing finished. But
Any more discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of accepting the Lions Club bench donation for 4 additional benches at the pickleball courts?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Aye. And abstain.
Oh, I forgot
Motion
that
carries.
selection. Abstain, I abstain.
Motion carries. Approved.
All right.
All right, so park fees 2020 is next on the
All right.
agenda.
So Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, included in your packet tonight, we'll walk through this, is the fee schedule for 2020. So every year, the city is required to formally adopt fees to charge to the city, charged by the city. And primarily, this is a tool for permits, license renewals, whether it's massage or liquor license, et cetera, permit fees, things of that nature. So Parks Department has a smaller collection of fees that we charge. What I have listed here are our fees from 2019. So you'll see most of them are just related to arts in the park. Shelter or gazebo rentals. We have a community garden rental, and then we have some athletic field and rink rentals available. So just wanted to make a note that the fees that we charge in our Park and Recreation Department help support the cost of either running a program or event or maintaining our facilities. So it's just to help support that. We still have costs that are incurred way beyond what we're collecting in fees. One good example is I know last year we added an ice, I believe it was last year we added or increased the ice rink rental in the last year or two. And the amount of time that Public Works puts into just maintaining and that ice at the parks is substantial. So it's just a sliver or fraction to help support that. So with that being said, I also just provided kind of a breakdown of our reporting that shows what revenue we collected last year based on our fees. So facility rentals, which included shelters, gazebo, community gardens, and ice rink, we were at about $3,000, which was we had budgeted $2,000 in revenue, so we exceeded our amount collected there. And then arts in the park, vendor fees, that bumped up to $5,950 last year, which was opposed to just about $5,000 the year before. So again, just kind of shows like a slight increase can have some impact, and just to let you know where we're at with collecting revenue for some of our programs and facilities. So here in this tonight is again, you'll see with that green header that says Parks, Trails, and Lakes Department, I am going to have our deputy clerk update that so it says Park and Recreation Department. So that'll be a header changed there. These are the fees we charged last year. You will see Fenway Field rental to be determined. That was held as a placeholder. Just as we're navigating through the Fenway Fields agreement and whatnot, we don't reflect any fees from Fenway Fields in our fee schedule. I don't think we're prepared tonight to set any fees as we're still navigating that process. I did confirm with our city attorney that if and when we are ready to move forward with an addition of field fees potentially for Fenway Park or any other fees, that's just a simple ordinance amendment. It's a resolution to add the fees. It's a fairly quick and easy process that we can do at a later time. So tonight I don't want to focus on, I don't think we're ready for anything with Fenway Fields or any other fees. Just really looking to get any input on our current fees from 2019. Tonight would be the opportunity if you felt that there was any room to, if you have any interest in increasing fees or obviously keeping them where they're at or reducing. From my perspective, I feel that from what I've experienced, I thought we had a really steady flow of reservations for our park facilities. I think splitting the gazebo rental to a half day and a full day was helpful and more affordable for people that were using it for like 3 or 4 hours. So I think we had an increased volume of those reservations. And arts in the park, I didn't have any concerns. We still had a waiting list last year for people to get in, so I don't think anybody was too concerned about paying the fee. It was helpful to have just a flat rate for food trucks. We used to measure it out by space, and that was just difficult to manage spatially. So if you're a food truck, you're a food truck, and that's your fee, and that's what you're gonna pay. The one other comment I'll make, we do have athletic field rental, the $15 per field per day. That is something that we need to implement a policy and procedure for collecting those fees and making sure people are reserving the fields through the city. So I'm hoping to increase the revenue next year by implementing that process. Right now, as we've discussed, people are just using the fields kind of first come, first serve. They may have their schedule, but they're not really booking anything with the city. So if somebody else is there, somebody else might be able to use it. So I think that's an important policy item as we jump into 2020 on how we collect that fee. And the only challenge I had was with the warming house reservation with rink attendant. It was pretty schedule dependent on, I have limited staff, and if somebody had requested it and they wanted with the rink attendant, then I had to see if someone was available to work that shift, and sometimes I couldn't provide that. So that was the only challenge. That was something we had added within the last year or two, and I think last year was the first time we tried that. And that was the only piece that I felt was a little challenging. If somebody wanted it with a rink attendant per our fee schedule, but then I didn't have anybody to staff it, that was a little bit of a challenge. So, and maybe that's a staffing situation, or maybe we don't need that as a service or fee that we charge. So overall, I think our fees feel comfortable. Do I think there's a little room to increase rates? I think we'd be okay, but again, just looking for any input tonight from the Parks Commission, but we would like to, if you feel comfortable and ready, to put forward a recommendation to City Council. They still are going to discuss this next Monday, so, if we're ready to move forward with a recommendation, that would be preferred. So I'm happy to entertain any questions. The back side of this handout, you'll see the fees from 2018. So you'll see that we did do a slight bump from 2018 to 2019. And I think that those changes were really helpful to make.
So Jamie, you might have already mentioned this, but the commercial fee versus, what is the commercial fee again?
So for Arts in the Park, commercial products would be
Like Anderson Windows, that?
like an Anderson Windows, or anybody selling direct sale products like 31 bags or
Okay.
something of that nature. More of a,
Excuse me, maybe you mentioned this too, but on the second page, it says warming house reservation with rink attendant is $10 an hour, and now it says 15 on the front. Did that go up?
we did, just as a reflection of increased compensation for staff, given the market. So we did bump that up to 15.
Okay. I didn't know if it was an error. That's fine.
And the intent isn't to make money through
The intent
rental
is
fees.
not to
It's all
make
about
money.
keeping track and records and,
Not going under too far.
yeah, because our parks are amenities.
Right.
We all pay service fees through our taxes.
Correct. I think it's just to help with some of those costs, to offer a fair and reasonable. I think keeping the cost reasonable is nice so that people can feel comfortable, and we want them to be utilized. And I felt like we had a pretty good utilization last year. I felt like I had quite a few. I thought last year was the busiest for park reservations that I've seen. So maybe we're just at that point of it's a good affordable rate. And we were, and it shows you, we brought in almost $3,000 for the facilities. And last year for community gardens, we have 20 garden plots, and I believe last year we were at like 75% capacity, which is good. I would like to be 100%, but we were at like 25% 2 years ago, so we've seen some increase there, and we only charge $30 per plot. So I think that helps support access to healthy foods and keeping that affordable for people.
In 2018, we did have a schedule for athletic field rentals, and that's like at Bells Park, the 2 baseball diamonds.
Yes.
Did we ever accept reservations and get paid for those?
We did not accept reservations People are just using Belts Park for like T-ball.
And so for 2019, or 20, we're proposing that anybody who uses it has to schedule it and pay for it?
I think that's a good policy discussion for the city. If you want to reserve it and make sure that you have it available, then you'd have to pay the fee. So what I experienced with the rinks, for example, it's just an easy way to explain. Rink time is a different element. I mean, it's kind of harder to come by, and you want to make sure you have the rink time to get your team out there to practice. So people were more than happy to reserve that rink time at the $15 an hour. And I think for so long, at least for several years since I've been here, that it's just a system's been in place that people are just using our fields at Belts and Schilling Park, for example, and it's just working. You know, it's this organic process of it's just working. And we don't have software or a system in place to, I don't want to say force, but kind of make that process happen, to fill out a facility use form, and here's your team and your dates, and here's how many we're going to reserve, and here's your invoice. I mean, we don't have a system in place for that. So if the Parks Commission wants to move to that platform, I mean, we certainly can do that. I think it's a normal thing for a lot of communities.
I like having it on here as a fee in the event somebody did want it and they wanted for sure rights to it. I like having it here, but if they're organically handling it and it's
amazing
working,
how it's
then
working.
I would say, great. Do we have a motion for the fee schedule, or?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 fee schedule for parks, lakes, and trails.
I'll second.
So we have a motion to approve with a second. Any discussion?
So just for clarification, that no changes to our 2019 fee schedule to be implemented.
Correct.
Okay?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. All right, motion carried.
I apologize, the chair, that I have another meeting to get to at 6.
Okay.
I trust you're going to make all the
Nice
decisions.
to see you.
I think at some level, we'll have to talk about a schedule. I mean, right now, community ed kind of uses it, and I think that's part of that partnership we've
Yeah.
talked about, you know, which makes sense. If it works organically, why really mess with it too much, but.
I think that comes under the strategic plan and what we do with agreements.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. All right, so we'll jump next into the Castlewood Golf Course Agreement, if that's okay. So Chair and members of Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, I included a slightly updated printout here of the Castlewood Golf Course Agreement. You may have seen a copy of this yesterday, as I was able to, from Friday to Monday, put this together. So I didn't know that I'd have it in a version that we'd have here today. So thanks to some edits from recommendations, I was able to make a few minor adjustments, and I'll walk you through that briefly. But just to kind of back up a moment here, the city of Forest Lake has an active agreement right now with the Castlewood Golf Course Management Agreement, and this is in place with JT Walker Enterprises here in Forest Lake. We've had a couple renditions of the agreement with them, and their agreement expires December 31st. The city was approached by the current manager within the last month or so, just with some challenges of operating the course, increasing operating costs, shorter seasons due to weather over the last couple of years. So had some concerns with moving forward into a new agreement, which is something the city would like to consider, given the high quality maintenance and just the relationship of what's been built out at Castlewood, a lot of history and tradition there. So that's just a little bit of background information of where we're at and why we're looking at a new agreement. Over the course of the last month, I've met with commission members on our agreements committee. I've met with city staff, leadership from the council to just navigate through this process, and have worked a lot with the current manager to kind of work through of what it would look like if we were to move forward with them again. So that brings us to here today, a draft agreement. with the current manager, JT Walker Enterprises. And if you've had a chance to read it over, I'll just kind of go through some of the highlights of this. But again, tonight we're looking for discussion and potentially action if the commission would like to pursue this agreement and continue moving forward of managing our golf course in this with Walker Enterprises. So with that being said, one of the main differences is the current manager was seeking financial support from the city to just help out with some of those operating costs. So fertilizer and mowing and repairs and, maintenance. There's just, anywhere up to $180,000 to $200,000 of annual operating costs. So it's expensive. And that's where we came up with a solution that I think both parties could at least discuss and see if it's something we can agree to. So we talked about having a 1-year agreement, but with the option to renew up to 2 additional years. I think there's a lot of moving parts and questions for both parties, just to kind of see with some changes that are going to be implemented, how that will affect the overall operating cost and revenue. So with that, our scope of services is to allow the manager to manage the golf course and maintain the golf course. So you'll see on page 1, there's letter number 2A is the golf course management, and then it outlines kind of all of those management responsibilities. A lot of this was copy and pasted from the former agreement if it was something that still worked and was something that would be part of their responsibility. So not a lot of content change. I did add sorry, one second here. I did add on page 3, kind of in the middle of the page, manager shall, so number XV 15, manager shall provide food and beverage options for sale at the golf course. All food and beverage operations must meet all state and local health and safety requirements and must be maintained in a clean, sanitary manner. Manager is responsible at their sole expense for obtaining any licenses required for the operation of food and beverage service at the golf course. That's just saying that they have to provide some form of food and beverage available. The former agreement said that they had to work in good faith with the restaurant establishment adjacent to the golf course, and we just changed that language so it's more broad of how they accomplish that, but they need to provide food and beverage and comply. So that's one change under the management piece.
Jamie, excuse me.
Sure, absolutely.
Do you want questions as we go along or at the end?
Let's do, I'll finish up really quick and then we'll jump to questions. So just the other pieces, the maintenance, nothing really changed there. And then just if I can direct you really quick to page 6, and then we'll go into questions if that's okay. The biggest change on this is page 6, number 4, payment. And as you'll see here, it's outlined that the city would actually help support this by providing $25,000 over the course of the 1-year agreement. I put in here that $5,000 would be due at the time of the contract being signed, and then 4 additional payments quarterly next year. To offset that, the city would like to set up a process to kind of collect a fee for each round of golf that is played, and then any fees that are collected from the manager would be put into a dedicated account for the golf course to further and future invest in the course improvements and maintenance. So that's, I think, one of the biggest changes and worth the discussion tonight, and if that's the direction that this Parks Commission would recommend the City Council pursue. So I just wanted to highlight that piece since that is, obviously a very different structure. Previously, the manager owed the city $1,000 annually, and that was it from a financial or payment standpoint. So again, nothing else really has changed. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions. We can kind of go through this, and Doug, I'll start with you.
Does the $25,000 come from the parks budget or from another city budget?
That's a good question. So currently, there is a Castlewood golf course budget, and it's very minimal. It just helps cover some of the wages of a public works staff, like a very small fraction of that. And I
In the-
believe
In the parks budget?
it's a separate budgeted account for Castlewood golf course with very little. It's just a small amount of maintenance dollars and I can pull up here to show you, what we've contributed. So it would not come out of our parks maintenance or our parks programs budget. The $25,000, for the 2020 budget, there was one account that was over budgeted $20,000. So nothing would have to change in the budget for next year. It would just be moving those dollars to the golf course budget, if that makes sense, if everyone's following.
So is it a general fund?
It's a general fund.
Okay.
And as you maybe come up or have any questions, part of a management agreement is the manager is responsible for, revenue and expense, and that's part of their duties. I know that this manager, they've invested quite a bit of dollars without city funds over the past several years, 10 years probably, and put a lot of money into maintaining the course to get it where it is without the help of the city. So I think this is the first time, at least under my direction or since I've been here over the last 5 years, that they've, sought help from the city to continue moving forward.
Jamie, one of the things I like is that as part of the agreement, they're required to show financials. And in the case of this company, they did quickly provide the financials, and that was a piece that the sub-team kind of looked at and talked about, which it was nice to be able to see that and to understand the investment that JT Walker has made into a city facility, for lack of a better way of explaining it.
I agree, the transparency and the immediate response, could we see your records? Yep, here you go.
Yeah.
He keeps track. Jeremy does a great job.
What's the general feel? I've never personally golfed there, but does it seem like the community's happy with it from your experience?
My understanding, very well received. It's in great shape.
Seems well attended from when I drive by, so.
I have another nit.
Yeah, either way.
Page 2, the last paragraph, 9,
Yes.
it says I. Other merchandises I may deem profitable. Who's I?
It is you, no.
That's me, okay.
I believe as it may be deemed profitable. So as it instead of I. And such other merchandise as it may deem profitable.
As the manager,
From,
or, but,
and such other merchandise as it may deem profitable. I believe it's a typo, grammatical error on my part. I should be it, I believe. Does that seem to make sense to others? That it was a typo?
Or nothing.
Or nothing.
As deemed
as
profitable.
deemed profitable.
As
Yep.
deemed. Got it.
And then over on page 3, 13 XIII, it says significantly increase. So that leaves a lot to, judgment, and that's fine if we want to do that. Is it 5%? Is it 25%? And is it realistic in today's environment to say that, the number of rounds will be significantly increased?
That is a very good and valid point. I think some data or metrics, if anything, would probably be more suitable there. But again, do we know the saturation of the court? I mean, is there room to move up and what that looks like? So I don't know if it's necessary to have that in there or not. If it's, and maybe, so I guess maybe a thought with what you're stating there. Maybe it needs to just be a little bit more of data or metrics or around their responsibility with social media or promotion, must promote quarterly or something that they're going to engage their media channels a little bit more. And we don't care about the result of that, but as long as we know that they're trying, there's X number of Facebook posts, or, I mean, I don't know how specific you want to get, but,
And I don't know how important this particular item is to the overall contract, so.
Right. It may be more, you know, that it needs to just be more general, so that just, I don't know, maybe it's just so they, you know, in good faith, they're doing their part to promote, which I don't know why they wouldn't, they're trying to make. a
Right.
profit, so.
Right. So, you know, I think to say significantly increase, though, is difficult. If the economy goes to heck, you can't
right.
be responsible.
Would
for
you
that.
want to, on that number 13, just scratch that last sentence and then maybe reword that first sentence in good faith to market and promote through blah, 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 channels?
I would agree with that.
Scratch that last sentence, okay. I think it's vague on what are sufficient funds anyhow of marketing dollars, so, and, okay.
Jamie, I had some questions as well.
Sure.
If we look at page 2, I was just curious on number 7, the manager shall develop, coordinate, and promote quality golf programs, and we already reference juniors, but then we also call out including a junior league program. If we're already telling them to quality golf programs, leagues and tournaments, is there a reason we need to call out the junior again?
Seems redundant.
It seems redundant.
I think it's redundant, and, you know, my hunch is I missed that on the fact that it was probably in the former agreement and carried through at whatever point in time that they didn't have a junior league and they wanted that implemented. So I will scratch that, including a junior league program, and just adjust that so it's,
That's all you'd have to do is
Yeah.
just scratch that. And then on the top of page 3, number 10,
okay?
I think there should be an addition as it relates to sales tax, because on the employment side, we hold them accountable for the employment taxes. So we have all sales and services shall be in accordance with standard retail prices for similar goods and service rendered in this area. Maybe we add all applicable taxes related to the sales.
Sales and use or.
Yeah, are the responsibility of the manager, so that it's clear that you don't want to be on the hook for delinquent sales tax, potentially.
All right, that's a good point.
These grade sales.
And then, on both 10 and 11, I was thinking, on all the other ones, we say the manager shall. I think on 10 and 11 on page 3, we should add here, the manager shall be responsible for all sales and services, or, you know what I mean? The manager shall be in accordance with standards, so that you're using manager.
Similar
consistently.
language.
Makes sense.
Number 11, a schedule of prices, services, and play fees shall be posted in the pro shop with full view of the public. Do we, in today's day and age of electronic communication, does he have a website, or would it be sufficient enough? Or do we need to put in here, I guess I would want it on the website, because I think if people are looking, they may want to Google it, so.
So he does have a website, and all of this information is already on the website, so it's that's met. I'm sure that this was probably a formality of going into the clubhouse to buy your rounds of golf or whatnot to have that.
Okay, so he already has it on the website.
Prices, services.
Did you say pro shop and online or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's one piece there that, I know that the fees for rounds of golf cart rentals, trail fees, I believe all that's online. What I didn't remember seeing online was like membership fees and leagues and tournaments or anything like that, so that might be important to add.
I just
So-
think in today's day and age, we should have something, I get we're requiring it to have it if people come in there, but
Gonna get them
in
there.
today's world,
You
they're
gotta get
gonna
'em there.
look.
They're gonna look on their phone
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, so. And then down at the very bottom of page 3, number 2, this is a dumb question, but I have to ask it. We say that the golf course shall keep the landscaping reasonably groomed and attractive. Do we want it to be reasonably groomed, attractive, and in playing condition? Or is that something different?
I think the landscaping, and maybe this is a good one for Jack to weigh in on, but I think the landscaping is just the landscaping and
Okay.
around
It
the
has
course,
nothing
and
to
then
do-
the greens maintenance and playing. Am I right, Mr. McKenzie, or not? Correct me if
I
I'm
would say
wrong.
you're correct. Yeah, but I've got some nits when you're all done. I'll just wait till you're done.
Okay. Page 4. I was wondering on number 3, we say, we talk about if the manager wishes to make such alterations, manager shall provide an accurate description of such proposed alterations to the city manager, and any alterations shall be done at manager's own expense. With the change in the agreement to the new appropriation or fund, does having that there, is that in conflict with the new funding structure?
I would say no, in the fact that they would still be responsible to do the work and get invoiced for it directly and pay that invoice. And so if you're saying because now we're contributing to the $25,000 over the course of the year, are those dollars dedicated to something like that? Is that what you're, because I think that's just to help support operating costs, maintenance and improvements, however deemed it's necessary. That's up to manager's discretion. It's just what we're contributing to help support that.
Okay,
Is that what you're wondering?
yep.
And I guess if there's any other thoughts on that, that's kind of my take on it, of if it's something else he really wants to do and it might be $50,000, he has to get notification from the city, yes, you can do this improvement project, you're gonna pay for it, and it's property of the city.
Okay,
Yeah,
Right.
the way I read it too is just, you can't change anything unless you get it approved by us first.
Right.
all right, then I'm moving to page 5. We have number 4, the proper annual springtime startup and end of season winterization. And down on number 10 or X, we kind of have a duplicative there. So I'm wondering if we can take, we have proper annual spring startup and end of season winterization of the irrigation system. Including, can we say including draining and blowing out of the pumps and irrigation system in the fall of each year? So move that part of 10 up to 4. Since they're.
Oh, yeah, it's
both-
just saying it the
Yeah.
same,
It's
saying the
saying
same thing.
Yeah, but
essentially.
in 2 separate spots, so if
Or
we could
just-
just move that sentence.
Or just scratch 4 and leave
10,
10.
horse and beast, I suppose.
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah.
I think number 10 obviously has a little bit more about the winterization piece. I think when including fertilization and winterizing all greens with snow mold protection to ensure spring playability. That's a key thing
That's
that
a
needs to
key-
happen. So
That's why I was
maybe we
splitting
just
them
keep
up.
10 and scratch it above.
Yeah.
Yeah, either way.
But
I'll
you could
scratch-
also look at the previous page, item number 4 says adjust and keep and repair all water pumps to water the course automatically.
Well, that was
We got a
my,
triple redundancy going.
that was my,
Just, I think we're splitting hairs here. I think some of the components of this contract are really pretty old based upon improper management practices being done in the past. You've got a professional manager, take care of the irrigation system.
Yeah.
You know, you're not telling them how to mow the greens, you're not telling them how to do anything, it's expected. He's gonna take care of the irrigation system. Somebody somewhere along the
Yes.
line didn't.
That's
That's why
why
it was
it's in there.
redundant, triple down. in
Yeah, and that's where, from that, especially that maintenance
Very good point.
piece, I know some of these have just been carried forward, and that's where this is, to get this worked through, because do we want to have all those specific things that they need to do, or is it just you are maintaining the course? These are all your, core items. Do we need to list, maintain signs showing number 1 and number 5 tee box? I don't think is that necessary? Can we really shorten that down to just
Yeah,
a
that,
few bullet points?
yep.
that whole section there is pretty intriguing. Trim all evergreens that come into play in accordance with the Minnesota Golf Association requirements to 3 feet from the ground. There's no requirement.
And that's what I
It's-
had that as a
that's
question
false.
too.
There's,
Oh, that's
no.
that's
there's-
great, because I
there's no
think
rule there.
that was a big question I had of, do we need all these specifics?
There's some
So-
nuances in here, yes. Okay, go ahead, we do it.
I'm almost
So I
done.
think,
I'm
yeah, if
almost
you want to finish, and then Jack will go to you, and then I think if we can turn it back to overall content of the agreement.
I read
and-
it at least,
That's good.
right? So, bottom of page 5, these are a repeat, like routine painting, and it's duplicated on page 4, so you need to
Wait,
remove.
which
one
page?
of
You're looking at a different
You got a different
printout
copy.
than everybody else here, girl.
them. Sorry.
Look at the one that was
Page
provided
4
today.
is our page 3.
Okay,
and-
so,
That was changed.
did it get changed? Okay, then that got changed. I'm looking under the payment section. of the
Page 6.
Agreement, which is my page
Top
6.
of page 6, yeah.
So on Woody's thing, we had as long as they are not in default on the payment. Is that standard language that needs to be in all of our agreements? Like, if, we're not gonna pay Woody if he's in default of the agreement. Should there be something in here so that there's some consistency? Because I recognize we have JT Walker right now, but things can change, and so should there be default language?
I'm gonna defer to our city attorney, but I know that there's a difference between a contract and an agreement, and this is an agreement. And there are some little differences because we're contracting services with Woody McBride for the arts in the park piece. So I think he was gonna be paid as long as he was doing his showing up, and I guess, yeah, you could vouch to say we should consider something, but I'll refer to our attorney on that.
All right.
I think the difference, let me just fast forward to the termination clause that we have in this agreement on page 8. That may cover what you're talking about.
Well, that was one of the things I had as well. I didn't see anything in here about being in default of the agreement as
Okay.
a reason for termination.
Okay, I will circle back with her and just see if we add a bullet point, whether it's in the termination or, I get what you're saying about we're not gonna pay you on October 1st if you're in default of the agreement, or,
And I just think it's important, if we have agreements, the language in some of these areas should be consistent, so we don't get into an issue
Yes.
of we like this one better than that one, or.
And that's
whatever
the-
case might be.
that's my goal, is to try to get some of these cleaned up and shortened, and, like, I took some of the content from the last agreement because most of that seemed relevant. I'm not a maintenance expert on a golf course, so I appreciate that comment on that. But hopefully we can get to some of these core items of what's required for insurance and waiver and kind of that standard legal agreement language that we need, and then carry that for some consistency. I think that would be great, so I will check on that.
Does, and then under ski operations and insurance, what does it mean when the city may cause the golf course to be groomed for use by cross-country skiers?
It's just a fancy way to say we may allow it to be groomed. Like, we could have somebody bring their snowblower or snowmobile in and groom the course. Washington County used to do it for us. So it's just a fancy way to,
We may groom it.
we might.
So if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck,
I
can
had
we
to
call
read
it
it
a
3
duck?
times before.
Can we call it a duck and just say we may groom it?
Yeah, we may groom it.
And then, with the insurance, I noticed that we've got the business automobile liability here. Does that also cover the golf carts, if there were an incident with the golf carts?
I believe,
Or any other equipment for that matter, lawnmowers, and
Yeah, and in this case, they're renting golf carts.
they're renting them out to.
To the
They
public?
Sign a waiver. And
Is it? Okay,
I would imagine they've got
Okay.
waivers when you rent.
okay. As long as
yeah,
we
I
have
think
a
that
waiver.
would, these are the insurance requirements put forth by our attorney, and these have been met. I know that the manager was wondering if there was any room to reduce some of the requirements for insurance, just because it is an expensive cost to carry all that insurance, but I haven't heard back from our city attorney, and I would presume that this is what you would see moving forward in the agreement.
1.5 million is the
Standard.
state standard.
Yeah. Yep, so, I wouldn't expect any changes there.
Okay, and then I have one more, Jack, just one
Mine are
more.
simple, yeah.
On page
Well, she went through the whole thing already, so now it's gotta be easy from
8 or
here.
9, it's number F, it's under the termination of the agreement.
Okay, F?
It says, all or any part of the property in which the premises are located shall be taken. Is that a reason for termination, or is that the outcome of a termination? So should the F be removed, and that would be the outcome if the city decides to terminate, or if there is a termination?
Not to mention, isn't it our premise in the first place?
Yeah.
Why would we have to
Put it in there?
take
Yeah,
our
I think
own-
that can be removed.
Probably a legalese type deal that copy and paste.
Okay, Jack, which ones, what page?
Okay, on the real agreement that we received tonight and didn't print out on a goofy printer,
Uh-huh,
page 4, we already addressed the redundancies.
yep.
We also addressed that you can take out the trim all evergreens. Fairway distance markers, if they're already out there, they're already out there. You don't have to tell them to keep them out there. I think it's kind of silly. Signage, one more thing to trim around. So fewer signs, I think, would be better for the operation. If he's gonna manage the golf course, and he's been doing an exceptional job, I just hate to tell him what he can and cannot do, you know, hey, change the light bulbs here. Maybe in the
Yeah, I'm-
past, maybe in the past, people didn't change the light bulbs. Well, when we sign a contract with somebody in this building, you know, if the light bulb's out, we expect, you're gonna change the light bulb. All the redundancies are taken care of. Page 5, item number 9, manager shall endeavor to maintain the golf course to the standards of the Minnesota Golf Association and obtain Minnesota Golf Association certification. I don't have any idea what they're talking about there. There are no standards based on the Minnesota Golf Association that I'm aware of, unless that's a golf professional thing. Obtain Minnesota Golf Association certification.
Is there any current certification that it should be replaced with that you'd recommend having in there, or that would be a credential of a golf course manager that they
Golf course
should have?
professional would be, or maybe that has to do with the handicap system,
Possibly.
GA. Maybe just Minnesota Golf Association membership. I guess I'm not aware of a certification.
I think the
A
purpose,
certification.
yeah.
Certification means you have to jump through some hoops to become certified. You have to do something to become certified. I think with the MGA, all you have to do is ask to be a member.
Okay, so MGA membership, are there any golf course standards that they should try to aim for? I think the intent of that is just obviously something to fall back on for the quality.
MGA recognize a golf course then, if there is no, I mean, can I literally cut a hole in the grass and say this is a golf course?
There are rules.
And become a member?
Yeah, you probably could. You'd have to have X amount of holes. It's based on handicap, and handicap is based upon how many holes, 9, 18, 27, 36, I imagine. But I guess I'm not familiar with the certification.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't understand, but some of the verbiage here has to do with, I think, mistakes that happened in the past. and
So,
somebody just
to your
covered the
point,
bases.
with this being proposed to JT Walker Enterprises with Jeremy Walker as our manager,
Yeah.
Is it?
this is not relevant. Because we are proven that of the work that he's done and able to do, that does it matter to us of what his credentials or associations are for this particular agreement? And maybe this was previously structured in a different way or for a different entity. Should we just scratch that?
Yes.
Makes sense. If it's meaningless, why would we have it there?
Yes.
I thought it was something important that you'd be excited to have in there.
Would you be excited, what would excite you if it wasn't Jeremy to be in here?
Well, I think if you had if we look back at the history of Castlewood, was there, with the exception of when True Ring took over, was there ever a request for an ROP? ROP? Yeah.
RFP.
RFP, thank you. Was there ever an RFP? I don't think so. I think it just kind of, hey, who wants to take?
There was, actually. 2006 was the RFP that,
With True Ring,
they won that RFP.
yeah.
And I believe that there may or may not, you're talking even before that?
Yes,
if there
I'm
was an
talking prior to
RFP?
that, yeah.
There may not have been prior to that.
Yeah, I don't think there was, because I was kind of part of that with another entity that was gonna manage the golf course until True Ring said they would take care of it. Okay, fine. But the prior management company had some challenges. People were frustrated with those challenges, so this was written in this fashion. Even to the point of having the word "The Rock" in the name. Managers shall use the name Castlewood, but you get to use The Rock too. Well, The Rock refers to the conditions of the course. It was always hard as a rock.
So that's carried forward. That's part of their, I mean, they go by the rock.
They were pleased, but I don't think it's The Rock anymore. It's the well-maintained golf course now.
So is that,
Neither here nor there. We're getting in the weeds here.
Anyways.
Sorry.
Yeah, really, I didn't have, payments. Item number 4, page 6, A, B, third paragraph down. The city will establish, I'd like to see the word dedicated inserted in there so that these funds are not generated and then suddenly we need some benches at a park. And hey, we've got some money in the golf course fund.
So this fund will be dedicated for capital investments and maintenance projects for the golf course.
exclusively?
Yes. And then I was just curious about page 9, golf course name, The Rock.
Here, I'm gonna show it, hold on one moment.
Yeah, the manager may, well, what if he doesn't want to? I know, The Rock.
I believe that they still put out communications referring to the rock.
That strip on the bottom, if you took that off, there would be reference to the Minnesota Golf Course Superintendent's Association.
The 9-hole regulations, par
Uh-huh.
36.
Yeah, which is interesting. That's just interesting. In the weeds, fact.
Did you have any?
I didn't know the history of the rock, but
No, I don't have anything else. I'm really satisfied with what Jeremy and his staff have done for the facility. I've looked at the financials. I think the additional compensation is reasonable. I have issues with cities that feel that golf courses should be required to have an income, when truth be told, they are just a premier park. They're a piece of property that we've managed as a premier park. Do our other parks make money? Well, we just looked at our fee structure. They're not making much money. They are just addressing administrative fees so we can keep records. The golf course is a great green space for the city. Period. Appreciate it as less. I'd like to see it used for more than just golf. Cross-country skiing, absolutely. I've got ideas, I could go on, but I need, use it at night sometimes. Have people walk out there. Use it, it's a park that people play golf on.
And I will say too, with this, in the last month, working with current management, they also are gonna implement some changes as well. It's not that they're just seeking support from the city. They are, going to implement some modest and necessary, membership rate increases to help with the revenue side of things on their end. Part of the greens fee to the city, so they're gonna have just like a slight increase in the membership fees, the rounds of golf, just up $1, basically to offset that cost that'll come back to the city to hold, that'll be reinvested into the course. So walking's gonna go up $1 for the weekday, and then they're gonna add weekend rates. Right now, it's the same price across the board. And just doing some research, more often than not, people have a weekend rate. So they're gonna add a weekend rate, which allows for that $3 to come back to the city in that exclusively dedicated fund for future investments. So they are gonna do some adjustments on their end. I'm hopeful that if we get that communications and recreation position approved in the budget, I think that the city should be a better partner at the table to help promote a city park and the operations at Castlewood. So I would really envision that communications person to help with some social media or just more awareness and draw, attention to the course to help on our end. I think that's something we said we could help with, is just to really help better promote and communicate, to hopefully increase those number of rounds of golf, which is more money to the city and obviously for the operator as well. But I just wanted to make note that really well maintained, and we have had some feedback come in that they really enjoy the current management structure. So
I think you hit on something that's key. As he looks at the rate structure, a communication strategy around that for people that are using it to help them understand that they're investing in the future
that's a good point
of
too.
the course.
Yes. So is there any other comments or
I was just gonna say, does
knitting?
anybody else have any other?
That was all very
comments?
helpful.
I'm a little more curious just on that, because the payment is new. It looks like there's a $26,000 swing. You said that we used to get 1,000 and now we're paying
Correct.
25. And then there's this collection. Any idea how many rounds of golf they have per year?
They did provide a report. They had about 7,044 rounds of golf last year. So the goal isn't to necessarily recoup the $25,000 in year one necessarily, but it's hard to say. I didn't get a breakdown of the weekday versus weekend rounds of golf. And so we're expecting obviously some funds back, but not the full 25,000. And I think that's where the question is, and just that value, the value that this is as a recreational amenity in the community, and what is that value to the Parks Commission and the city to help support that initiative. Comparatively, when you think of other ways we spend our money in parks, $10,000 goes to the American Legion for fireworks, which is gone in 20 minutes or less. And in 2017, even though we are in a management agreement with FLAW at Fenway, we spent over $20,000 on irrigation repairs and other maintenance items as kind of a one-time item. So that's just comparatively of other ways we've had to help support some of these initiatives in the community.
What is his total budget that he presented? You said 180 to 200,000, was that?
Yes, as the operating.
Operating budget. That's an incredible low number. He's doing a heck of a great job. I used to be superintendent at a 9-hole golf course, and he's spending his dollars wisely.
So I know there was I'm just going to say that I know there were some grammatical or formatting redundancies in this, but I think if you kind of look at the core functions, the one question I had following up on the maintenance responsibilities, if we're going to scratch kind of those specific tasks, would we then be, so we would be looking at page 3. If we can just take a minute to go through that, just to make sure we're not missing any key language that kind of says all-encompassing responsibilities. Is there anything we'd be missing then if we take all those pieces out? So for maintenance, they'd be responsible for the routine and preventative maintenance of the golf course, including the pro shop. Seems pretty all-encompassing with just that, I guess. So then we would keep that we'd keep number 2, manager shall maintain in good condition all trees. Everything has to be groomed well. We'd keep number 3. We're going to scratch 4 in its entirety. Correct?
The manager at a minimum?
Yep.
Yeah.
Manager shall at a minimum, and all those specific things.
Yeah, those are just
Okay.
standard operating procedures.
And we've already talked about
Manager shall maintain the
scratch.
golf
I'm going to scratch the next one as well. 5.
Manager shall be responsible. B, you've got I, which starts out manager should be responsible for routine preventative maintenance of the golf course,
Right.
including the pro shop, and then you've got it
Yep.
again.
So I'm going to scratch 4 and 5 in its entirety. because on the very bottom of page 3, it says manager shall be responsible for routine and preventative maintenance of the golf course, including the pro shop. So that covers that blanket statement of, you're just,
Yep.
does everyone feel comfortable with that? Keep number 2, keep number 3, scratch 4 and 5. 6, I think that's probably worth keeping so that they know they're responsible to pick up garbage throughout the complex or the course and the service building. 7, I think we should keep. 8, that's good.
Yeah.
Everyone, scratching number 9. Number 10, we're gonna keep that one, and number 11 is fine to keep as well. Is that okay with everybody comfortable with that for maintenance? Are we missing anything?
Well, if we go back to 6, manager is responsible for regular garbage pickup of all trash, refuse, or other garbage accumulated within the service building.
Just probably pro shop?
Well, it's about the service building, I guess. Manager shall at all times maintain the service building, and then it says you gotta pick up the garbage in the service building.
Well, I think that, I'm just gonna,
I'd get rid of that, at least as good condition as existed.
Apparently, there was a problem with that at one time.
It must have been a messy service building.
so just some language updated there that simplifies that they have to keep the complex
Yeah.
clean and picked up of garbage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I think that covers, does everyone feel good about that as all encompassing for maintenance responsibilities? And again, this is a manager that's been there and done that for the specific contract. It's not like we're going out to 3 different groups to see, give them the specific details of what's done. I think he knows he's gonna continue his operation, so simplified. Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the Castlewood Golf Course agreement with the changes that we discussed here this evening.
Second?
Is that a second?
Yeah.
Any discussion? Hearing no
Good.
discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain, so that motion carries. Thank you for all your work on that, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was helpful to get different perspectives. I've seen it and I've looked at it a lot. So just simplifying and getting rid of those specific details and catching my little mistakes. So thank you. So this will, just so you guys know, will go to City Council next Monday, the November 25th meeting. I believe it'll be on their agenda as discussion. And then they also have December 9th for a regular meeting for approval. So.
Is there any concern? Do we need to be there to voice?
I don't think so at this time. I don't think so. I think there should be, I don't think there'll be any concern, but if I find that out and if there's any questions that it would be helpful for Parks Commission to be represented at any of those meetings, I will be at the November 25th council meeting anyhow, so I can certainly speak to that there if there's any questions as we go through that discussion. So I will certainly let you know.
Okay.
All right, discussion items, the 2020 work plan, we just a quick update on this one. So we were gonna talk today about a piece of that, but we readjusted things to get the agreements and the fee schedule going. So the goal is for next month to take a look at, we'll have a 1-pager that we can look at that basically has the new mission, what we said were the capital improvement things we were gonna work on, the agreements and the maintenance piece of things for us to take a look at, and if we need to adjust it, we can, so that we start 2020 kind of knowing what our plan is and where we're headed. And so I just wanted to give an update on that real quickly, because originally we had talked about doing it this month, but like I said, we wanted to make sure the fee structure and the agreements got on the agenda first. So we haven't lost sight of it. It's just we're postponing it a month. So, and then along with that also is the sponsorship policy. We need to take a look at that and provide any feedback and input. So we'll bring that next month too. So, and thank you for your
I continue
input.
to think of opportunities. It depends on how far does the city want to go on sponsoring or making placards or promotions. Because you could get crazy. It'd be great for the community. But, well, it depends how far you want to go.
Yeah. Well, more to come. We'll discuss
Tattoos.
that.
Tattoo stickers.
Okay, we don't want to go that far. We don't want to go that far.
Just saying, football helmets.
All right, Fenway Management Agreement.
Okay,
Jamie,
I'm just
did
pulling
you-
up a document here, just be a second. Okay, so Chair, members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, I'll try to get through this one fairly quickly. Clearly, I've been very busy with the Castlewood agreement, and it's been a lot of work to get where we're at here today, and they had more of a time-sensitive deadline with getting out membership packages for an early bird rate and everything like that, so, but I'm sure people are kind of wondering, we also do have a Fenway management agreement expiring at the end of this year as well. So I just wanted to at least kind of go over this and provide a brief discussion tonight. So I have some background tonight I can kind of go through. And then the intent tonight is just to discuss and see if I'm on track with kind of the direction based on feedback of what we've had in this term of our agreement and just kind of where to move forward. And then I would expect by our next meeting to have something similar to our Castlewood agreement in place for review. So just again, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background. Our Fenway Athletic Complex, we have a current agreement in place right now with the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association, which again expires December 31st of this year. And really, since this complex has been developed in 2008, this is the format the city has, the structure the city's gone with is an agreement with FLAW. And really that allows the exclusive right to manage and operate the complex, broken down into management and the maintenance of the complex and fields. So that's the structure we've had. During the current 3-year agreement, we had some challenges with some of the maintenance responsibilities in 2017. So the city jumped in and helped out with some of the irrigation repairs. A lot of the irrigation heads were broken. The turf was, we had that reviewed by a sports turf manager, and it was deemed not suitable for play and unsafe. So we had some maintenance challenges, and at that time, required that FLAW move forward with the maintenance contract outsourced, and something that they did not do in-house anymore of the mowing and the fertilizing, and no longer responsible for the irrigation. So that change happened in about 2017. So last year was the first year that FLAW moved forward with a maintenance contract with J. Walker Enterprises for the mowing, fertilizing, weed control, and aeration. So the core maintenance items at the complex. That went into effect last year, and that's a contract that FLAW held directly with Walker Enterprises. That contract again went into effect this year, so they have that relationship again where FLAW is essentially contracting with Walker Enterprises to do those core maintenance functions. So that's just a little history. That piece has changed. During this period of time, FLAW has continued to be involved in the field preparations. So I just outlined here kind of what that looks like for responsibilities for them. So the baseball and softball fields, FLAW helps field prep with the grooming and the chalking for games within 24 hours notice. And then for the multi-purpose fields, they assist with the prepping. So basically in the spring, I'm assuming they go line the fields and paint it one time, and then the teams are responsible to kind of maintain that throughout the season. So those are kind of the two buckets where FLAW is involved with the field prep. And then I do know that the teams have a lot of responsibility in between games and practices as a team, so softball or baseball, et cetera, to maintain the fields by raking and dragging and kind of intermittently. So FLAW really is helping with game prep, field prep for games. In addition, FLAW has continued to work with their teams to schedule the use of Fenway fields. And they've actually also been, as the manager in this agreement, they've scheduled fields for outside groups. So an example would be last year, Sports Hawk sports group to do sports camps contacts the city to rent our fields. And then that went over to FLAW to schedule because of this management agreement. So that company worked with FLAW to determine when they could use the fields at our park and we're charged fees per FLAW's fee schedule. So that's kind of how the current arrangement has operated. We're in a position now because of those maintenance changes during this term of our agreement that we have to restructure our agreement. It's gonna look a little different because that element's not in there. So, earlier this year, the Fenway Advisory Committee met, which includes 2 members from Parks Commission, 2 from council, myself, and then president of FLAW and another board member. So they understand that if the city takes over that maintenance piece, which is essentially gradually kind of happened over the course of this agreement, that is that's the direction to go with that maintenance piece. So we're looking at the city just instead of kind of who's passing the money to who's paying who. So it's just the city could contract with Jeremy Walker for those core responsibilities and pay them directly, and then just have an agreement with FLAW that they just, whatever that fee might be to the city to rent the fields essentially. So that's kind of the direction. I don't have numbers or anything of that set yet, and kind of looking to discuss some of these elements. But we do need to restructure the agreement if it's a management agreement or if it's more of a field rental agreement where we set our fees for Fenway Fields. How does the Parks Commission feel about scheduling the fields outside of FLAW? I mean, they are and they will continue to be our primary user group there. It's just figuring out how that relationship continues, and so it's easier or best for both parties in the community. A lot of City of Hugo kind of has a similar complex, so they have their belts and their shilling park, $15 an hour, but then they do have a nicer complex, so they kind of have a similar structure that's that I've been looking at too, of working with a similar entity where it's just a flat fee that they charge, and then that group gets the free reins of the complex for the most part. So with that, I guess where I'm at is kind of figuring out how that new structure looks, and then turning that into an agreement where, again, I think it better aligns with making it a little easier for everybody. So if there's any current questions, or I can turn it for discussion. I don't need any action tonight, just to give an opportunity as I'm going into this process to see what other communities are doing and what would work well for both the city and the FLAW to continue moving forward with an agreement with them. So any questions or comments, thoughts?
Just out of curiosity, a few years ago, we had some challenges with transparency and dollars that came in and went out, and I was just wondering if that was ever resolved. And is that something that we should be concerned with? I don't know the finances, or maybe we don't need to be worried about that, but there were some idiosyncrasies that I found curious several years ago.
Yeah, I think there has not been any resolution. I think we get the annual profit loss report, which I believe is provided by FLAW for their Fenway Fields budget, essentially. So we get profit loss report. It is pretty high level, so there are more of like lump sums of dollars that aren't really broken down to understand where that revenue stream, $43,000 in revenue, but what is, how does that break down by team or by, to line with fees and whatnot. So we don't have any more detail beyond that, and that's the information we've received.
I like the concept of moving more towards a field usage agreement. Since the maintenance has primarily all transitioned, and if we moved more to a field usage agreement, then it wouldn't matter what their financials are. We would have a structure in place, and just like you referenced Hugo or other cities do, they would get primary usage and they would know what fee they have to pay. I think it would be much cleaner and streamlined, and get us out of the business of some of that stuff, that like the financials and other pieces. So I'm excited to see what you come up with.
Do other cities ever rent out or allow groups to be concessionaires?
I haven't done a lot of research on other communities and how they handle concession operations. I do know of one agreement that I have seen where similar, but I think it's more adult programming, but they let this group the said group runs their athletic programs there and they run the concessions. But I think are you talking about like other different groups outside of FLA?
Yeah, within the community, I just see a nice business partnership with the schools if they,
Yeah, I'd have to check on that piece a little bit more, just because my focus has been more on the use of the fields. And I think what I have learned through softball or baseball, but I think that when they schedule their fields, all the teams schedule them themselves amongst themselves. And I think it breaks down to like blocks of time. So I don't think we would need to care about Tuesday at 5:00 who's on the field. I think it's more of FLA has it Monday through Friday from these times, or whatever those blocks are, and whatever they're currently scheduling, they can continue to schedule that way. And then, whether or not we schedule additional groups or if that's something that FLA would retain. My goal or thought was to try to identify a revenue source that we could collect fees like Castlewood, a similar structure where then we can kind of hold those fees to put back into the complex. Because I know that there's so many requests from FLA of egg lime and sodding and lights and all of these improvement items. And so strategically, from even the strategic planning, how do we find more revenue to support some of those initiatives? So I'm just trying to think if there's a way that we can implement that into some kind of arrangement similar with Castlewood of a dedicated account, and whether that's, to be determined, but advertising rights or certain fees that we could charge to I talk with my hands, other user groups to bring in some revenue to put back into the facility. That seems like it might be a good structure to support the projects.
I'd like to see if the maintenance changes, I think we'd have a better handle on maybe what the capital improvements are. And we could potentially get those early enough in the process, whereas we're thinking about strategic planning and capital improvements, those items could be worked into the priority list with other things. I'm a little leery about making an appropriation for every, for our premier parks, because that potentially takes away from our other parks and it limits our flexibility. So at least for now, I need to see more and understand it better. I get it. I'm a little bit more comfortable with it on the golf course side than I am with Fenway, because to me, Fenway is more like a park, more than the golf course is. So, but I'm open to looking at something, but I'm just, once you start putting everything into dedicated appropriations, you lose a lot of your flexibility to be able to spend that money where you need to, when you need to. So I think there's a balance there. Anybody else have comments or?
Well, like on the lights, that's, we just basically finished paying off that loan, and I don't see lights going up there in the near future, because that's such a huge cost.
Yeah, and maybe lights is a bad example. That could be on that list, but
Right.
maybe that's not the top need anymore, because now we have more
But
land to
We have
expand.
we have the other land
yeah.
to build that other ball field. And the other question is there's two storage units out there. One's stuck in the grass. Is that being used for anything, or? And I thought a couple years ago, they were supposed to do some moving around on that, so.
Yeah, that is a good point. So they do have two large storage sheds out there. One was painted and looks maintained with I think it looks a little nicer. The other one was requested by the city to be moved in 2017 and has not moved, and was to be painted to match the other one, so it's a little more aesthetically pleasing to the residential's homes right there, and I don't think that's been painted either. So I think that's part of the management piece. When you have a management agreement, you're allowing them the exclusive right to manage and maintain the complex, that they kind of have that free reign, similar to a golf course. How we just simplified that agreement down. You're just responsible for what happens out here, maintenance, management, scheduling, everything. So, the city hasn't fully enforced that. I think they are being used for storage. We did get a couple of complaints that it was like, what's this, it looks like a big box car right in someone's backyard. And the city, is open to working with them on a new solution of storage, because there is a need for that. So, but that is still there. And I think something we still need to figure out how we're gonna address that, if that's written into a new agreement or,
Well, that's the issue. It's been 3 years. 2017, 2018, 2019. I mean, giddy up. We asked you to fix it.
Well, I guess we know how those clauses get into agreements now, don't we?
Well, yes, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes.
That's funny.
Maybe that's why the agreement needs to change, which is
Yeah.
why we're talking, right?
Yeah.
So
I like
it
the
makes sense.
concept.
It looks good. I'll be interested to see where it goes.
okay. So if you have any other thoughts, what I'm looking at is, the maintenance piece, obviously we know needs to change a little bit, but then just starting to kind of dig into conversations on what would work well for both parties, the similar process I just kind of went through with Castlewood, to talk to everyone involved and see, really, I don't expect any major changes. They're still our primary users out there. I think it's just a matter of how it's structured. Does the city want to schedule like the handful of miscellaneous requests that come in or not, and how that looks? Some of those nitpicking kind of things. So if you have any other thoughts or comments or see anything else from other cities or anything you hear in the community, just let me know.
Are we keeping our teams within the community, or are some of our teams going outside the community too?
I do know most of the community, so currently within FLA, they either utilize Fenway Fields or school fields. So it's kind of confusing in the fact that FLA is managing our fields, but they also use fields from the school, and then the school use Fenway Fields. And there's kind of that just triangle. And then I know there are some groups that have games not in Forest Lake. So there's other Forest Lake teams that aren't playing at Fenway, and I don't know the reason why or why not, but they're, they have home games in Blaine. So keeping people in Forest Lake, I think, is an important factor. So learning more of like where that challenge is coming in or why that's happening. If it's, I don't know who to contact or how that scheduling piece works from a management standpoint. Because I know currently on the FLA's website, they have a little part in the corner to contact Al Hauge, the president, to schedule fields. And I don't think they have any online or formal online process for that, so.
That's where there may be an opportunity here if we have the ability to, again, allow them to be the primary users and pick a date of when they would need to respond by with the fields that they're going to use in the schedule. That would then allow us to use it for other, if we've got teams that are playing home games somewhere else, that would at least allow us to know what's available, and then the city to work with them. Or as we look at partnerships, if we end up pursuing something with the schools, we know what's available and can work it into some scheduling platform as
Yeah,
well.
I think there's a way to simplify it for everybody.
Yeah.
It seems like they're managing so many different spreadsheets and teams and who's playing where, when, and it's all in different platforms. And there's a way that city, school, and FLA can kind of work together, or I don't know the magic arrangement of that yet, but the goal is to continue the partnership, but figure out if there's an easier, more streamlined and effective way to run that.
Yeah. If we can't explain it to somebody, how do we expect the public to understand what they need to do? So, yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
All right.
Did you have any staff updates?
Really quick, I know we're getting late. I just was gonna say that I recently attended the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Association's annual conference the first week in November, and a lot of good content there. It was my first time going to the conference in 5 years, so I was really happy to attend. A lot of good breakout sessions, a lot of good learning opportunities. I'll summarize some notes and send it off to you, but I kind of went to different sessions kind of on the whole spectrum, from really interesting data around what our population is going to look like in Minnesota in 10 years, and 20% of that being 65 plus. So I think that really we need to focus on thinking of that as we continue moving forward with priorities. We also, closing the income gap for youth sports and how that can affect, youth participating in sports. It was a really interesting conversation about that income disparity and just how important it is to keep things affordable for youth so that they can participate, which I think is important to tie into this whole management structure. And but it was a lot of great content. I went to so many different sessions, so I'll summarize that. And excited with some new energy and ideas from other communities. So it was great. So I also attended the city, and the YMCA is running a 3-series inclusion, equity and inclusion session right now. So I went to the session last week called Dimensions of Diversity. It was very interactive, engaging. I'm going to try to sneak over there if we have time tonight for the last session. But it's really important as you think about equity and inclusion in the park system, and it's important in the work that we do for Park and Rec. So that's the bulk of it, and just want to share that with you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I do have an introduction back to the Castlewood Golf Course Management Agreement. Who will be responsible for the trees that must be taken down due to emerald ash borer? How many ash trees do they have on the golf course? Because we have ash trees that are impacted by emerald ash in the city now.
Right.
There were 2.
The city's just
diagnosed.
embarking on those conversations of what that plan's gonna look like. So I don't know how quickly that's gonna go into effect for the plan. I don't know if that will be within 2020 or not,
Because
because,
when
but,
the tree is dead, it's a liability,
right.
and it has to come down. And if there are a lot of ash, I think there are quite a few ash trees on that golf course. How much time will Jeremy and his staff be putting into getting rid of these trees so they don't become a hazard to the players? The issue with emerald ash borer is it ruins the integrity of the tree. So what happens is they call it throwing or casting a branch. It will literally just drop a limb. Unlike elm trees that hold their structure, ash trees just start to break apart. And they become a hazard for removal too, for that reason. They lose their integrity.
So will is under our agreement, is he responsible? Is Walker Enterprises responsible for removing dead ash trees?
Well, I think that should be
Yeah.
a consideration because it could be a huge impact. It could be, I mean, the 25,000 that we were gonna compensate him would be gone in a heartbeat, especially with removal.
So we had in the agreement on page 4, the first one listed there, or number 2, about keeping the trees maintained and in good condition, but maybe I'll make a note about considering something about emerald ash borer.
What would we expect?
Yeah.
Jeremy to take care of that, or being that it's a city park, would we
I can't
bear
imagine.
the responsibility?
It makes sound for a city.
See, this, I mean, do we really wanna look at, not that you're suggesting that, I think maybe the contrary, but.
It's gonna be a big issue beyond just the golf course.
Yeah.
Because we've got boulevard trees that are ash trees, and when emerald ash borer hits, everybody's gonna be blown away. Because it's just not a tree over here and a tree over there. I've got Jamie's. They're all gonna be impacted. And it's gonna be devastating. Look at Detroit.
So for the purposes of that contract, would we be suggesting that we need to include verbiage that says Jeremy is responsible or is not responsible?
I think what I
for
would.
Tree removal of, if that hits the city, for this purpose, to get that contract.
Well, for this purpose, to get the contract going, there's still council discussion, and I know the city's just embarking on this emerald ash borer conversation. I know Dave Adams, Director of Public Works, is just starting these conversations, so I think that it's good to note and look into. I think that we need some more information to make a decision on who's responsible for that and what that cost is, and I think we could still move forward with the actual agreement, and then if anything, it's an amended agreement later down the road in a few months, but this agreement's a 1-year term with option to renew, and I don't know how quick or fast this will be an issue. I know it technically is now that it's been identified here. So I think for the purposes of this, we just keep as is for now and then amend if needed. Does that seem fair?
I agree, because I think there's gonna need to be a holistic strategy behind it, because it won't just be the golf course. It'll be other
Citywide.
city, yeah, but the city's gonna have responsibility at other places in that, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
because
I'm glad
it
you
is a-
did, because it's,
Yeah, yeah,
And I don't want the golf course, Jeremy, to be responsible for a big hit on
Yeah.
that. You know, a tree blows down in a storm, run out there with a chainsaw, cut her out.
Yeah.
yeah.
But you've got 80 trees that are now, that are dead. And throwing their limbs,
Yeah.
and crushing carts,
jeez.
people, that's kind of, could be an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it does.
Liability.
Then whose trees are they? Are they the city's trees?
Yep, something for Dave to figure out.
Yeah, Dave, not me, no. Dave.
Holistic city approach, right?
Yeah.
For Dave to figure out.
Thanks, Dave.
All right.
Close circuit.
So I just had one reminder that Saturday, December 7th is the tree lighting ceremony. So we changed it to a Saturday outside of the holiday weekend based on community feedback. And we also have an indoor element, so if anybody is available on that day and wants to come volunteer, we'd love to have you. So from 2 to 4 within the city center, we'll have arts and crafts, and movies and cookies and cocoa. And then outside, about 4:15, I think it is, for the tree lighting and some songs. And then Vanelli's is going to provide a warm-up food item as well, so.
So change it to soup. They're gonna go with soup, complimentary soup.
So,
That's fantastic.
we'll-
That's community.
yeah, and we'll add a food drive to it as well, so. So if you guys are available, or if you wanna promote it and get the word out, we would love that. And you all have a little brochure.
I can email you the digital file tomorrow if you have any
Yes.
connections to send it to. It's coming up quickly, but I think we put the save the date out a couple weeks ago, and we'll start promoting it again heavily tomorrow and get some flyers hung up around town. So I think people will be happy with the change and be warm inside.
Any other updates from different leaders at all?
Well, I got one. After our last meeting, I attended a joint meeting about Veterans Memorial at Lakeside. Some members of the Legion and the VFW, Jamie and I were there. And it sounds like, and I think we have a meeting maybe tonight, if that's still happening. No, that got canceled, I missed it.
December 17th next.
Oh, it is, okay. So it sounds like some steam, some people want to see that thing moving forward. I know we've talked about it loosely here and there, and at some point it'll require some work, I suppose, on our end as well, but at least it's going, and they're talking about beautifying it and making some progress, so.
Thanks for making that update, because that was gonna be on my list, but I'm glad you shared that, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? We have a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, we are adjourned.